A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. Many signs and wonders were done among the people at the hands of the apostles. They were all together in Solomon's portico. None of the others dared to join them, but the people esteemed them. Yet more than ever, believers in the Lord, great numbers of men and women were added to them. Thus they even carried the sick out into the streets and laid them on cots and mats, so that when Peter came by, at least his shadow might fall on one or another of them. A large number of people from the towns in the vicinity of Jerusalem also gathered, bringing the sick and those disturbed by unclean spirits, and they were all cured. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I cannot help but notice that this passage is a conversion story. Particularly, it's a conversion story of the early church. Now, all of us here, I imagine, to a certain extent, have experienced a conversion of some sort. So I've thought that maybe there are about 4 steps that go along in a conversion that we might all be able to identify or agree with, perhaps. And I think the first step is actually the encounter. Right? So there's something that happens. Maybe it's grace, maybe it's a witness, maybe it's a reading, it's a person that we find. But there's some sort of encounter, and something strikes us, it draws us in. And after this encounter happens, the second step then is wonder. We are filled with wonder. We are asking, what struck me? What might happen to me? What draws me into this mystery? Something sparked us, and now we're curious so much that we can't ignore it. And then thirdly, after the wonder, brings us to the decision. Right? This is kind of the hardest part of a conversion. It's a critical point. Either we're going to go forward with this thing, whatever it may be, it's a sacrifice often, or we'll stay comfortable where we're at. And finally, if we do make this decision, the 4th step is healing and consolation and peace. Now, these are the 4 steps that we read very literally in this story, actually. The first line starts with, many signs and wonders were done among the people. So very easily, right, there are things happening. People are being drawn in. There is this encounter occurring all over the place. And they're curious. It says the people esteemed them. So the second step, right, there's wonder. They're being drawn in. They want to know what's happening. Why are these apostles doing these things? Who's causing this? What could happen to me if I believe in this? And then thirdly, there's the critical point, the decision. And actually, back to back, one line we read, none of the others dared to join them. And then the next line, great numbers of men and women were added to them. So there's a tipping point. Some are choosing to go forward in this conversion and others are not. But they cannot deny what they're seeing. They cannot deny what's happening. And fourthly, perhaps most obviously, the last line of this passage, and they were all cured. So those who did go forward with this conversion, those who accepted this, were healed of their ailments. Those who were disturbed by unclean spirits were cured. We're to do the same thing 2,000 years later. We're still in need of a conversion. Our church is wounded. Our world is wounded. Our families are wounded. But Jesus is calling us ever deeper into His love and ever deeper into His healing. And the conversion starts here, in the heart, with the individual, with the personal and very intimate relationship that each of us has with our Lord. So we must graciously and freely accept Jesus into our lives every day and enable Him to slowly convert us, to transform us into who we are created to be. We have seen the wonder. We just relived it this week and last week with the death and resurrection of Christ. So now the decision is up to you. Will you allow yourselves to be converted? Will you allow yourselves to be healed?